The whole world is abuzz, shocked by a leak straight from the White House. The US peace plan was written in the Kremlin. Washington has finally caved to Russia. Trump doesn't know where to look. It's begun. There are still 3 years until the elections, but others are already trying on the American president's seat. A fierce political storm has erupted in the US. Emergency orders. Ukraine has emerged victorious. Massive strikes on Russia are making Putin dizzy. And then yet another problem arises. Military bases have suddenly been emptied, and all of this has happened right now. Hello, I'm Darina Hertzakalo, and we're getting started. This is a sensation, a mega leak that's shaking the world. Bloomberg has put on the table what are allegedly real transcripts of secret negotiations between top US and Russian officials regarding the preparation of a so-called peace plan. What was supposed to remain a secret has suddenly come to light. In the first conversation on October 14th, Steve Witkoff advises Putin's aide, Yuri Ushakov, on how Putin should talk to Trump and present the peace plan regarding Ukraine. To speak with the head of the White House right before Volodymyr Zelensky's visit. Moreover, at the very beginning, be sure to congratulate the American politician on the gas peace agreement and say that Russia supported him. In addition, add that the Russian Federation respects the US president as someone who fights for peace. However, that's not all. There are also recordings of a phone call from October 29th, during which Ushakov allegedly consults with Putin's special representative Kirill Dmitriev about passing on to the Americans a plan regarding Ukraine, which the US should present as their own.
The president will give me a significant amount of space and a great deal of freedom to make a deal, allowing me to work more independently. So if we can create an opportunity to say afterwards that I spoke with Yuri and we had a conversation, I think it could lead to great things.
Bloomberg stirred things up and Trump immediately hit back. They say that Special Envoy Witkoff was simply trying to pressure the Russians into peace. That's
the standard thing. He has to sell this to Ukraine. He has to sell Ukraine to Russia. That's what a deal maker does.
But in Moscow, they started to panic. Putin's representative Dmitriev calls the report fake and shouts that it's all an attempt to derail the deal. However, nothing new here. The same old record that everyone is used to started playing again. It seems a real storm has suddenly hit Washington. A rift is brewing within Trump's team over how to end the war in Ukraine. The reason is the rivalry between Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who are both potential candidates for the U.S. presidency. One camp, including De Vance, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and other officials, sees Ukraine as the main obstacle to peace and advocates for using leverage of U.S. influence to force Kyiv to make significant compromises, according to several current and former officials. The other camp, represented by Rubio and other officials, holds Russia responsible for launching an unprovoked invasion of its neighbor's territory and says that Moscow will only back down if it pays for its aggression through sanctions and other forms of pressure. According to the publication, this is why even Trump himself is hesitating. Now, however, he has stated that he has not set any deadlines for reaching a peace agreement on Ukraine, and has instructed Witkoff to meet with Putin, while Driscoll is to meet with the Ukrainian side. Once again, our retaliation strikes mercilessly at the heart of Russia. Russians freeze in anticipation, wondering what will put on a fire show in the sky above them today, drones or perhaps ballistic missiles. They didn't have to wait long. A new route on enemy territory. Ukrainian drones struck the NIR Progress facility in the city of Cheboksary in the Chuvash Republic.
This enterprise is a leading manufacturer of electronics for Russian missiles and drones. In particular, it produces Kometa antennas. The plant is located about 1,000 kilometers from Ukraine's state border. It is part of the ABS Electro Production Association. Now, all that's left of the plant is ashes. As soon as the explosions died down, the occupiers grabbed their phones, filming their own disaster live. You're not happy to see me. Flames consume the horizon while the Russians silently document their own apocalypse. The famed air defense once again hit residential buildings. It's coming, do you see? It's falling, it's falling. A building. This can no longer be hidden. Problems in Russia are overflowing. One of the largest Russian bases with MTLB combat vehicles is now almost empty. Putin's army has suffered a devastating blow. Until recently, this base was a key storage site for Soviet armored vehicles, which were actively used in the war against Ukraine. Now it looks abandoned, and most of the equipment has been removed. According to OSINT analysts' estimates, there could have been several hundred vehicles there which were gradually sent to the front or decommissioned. Now, however, the situation has changed dramatically, and it seems that a similar scenario awaits a number of other arms workshops. In Ussurisk, after the satellite images were updated, it is clear that almost all the equipment has disappeared. Only trucks remain. This gives grounds to expect similar changes at base 7020, which has not yet been updated but has likely also emptied out.
An emergency geopolitical blow. Ankara has sharply changed the rules of the game. Black Sea routes are closing for Russia like a tightening trap. Turkey is imposing strict restrictions, and in Moscow there's a nervous breakdown. The elites are in a frenzy. No one expected Ankara to take such a cold and calculated step. Whether the Kremlin can get out of this geopolitical trap, it's already too late. More on this in the report coming up in a moment.
The end of relations between Turkey and Russia. Ankara has confirmed its support for Ukraine's territorial integrity and its readiness to help rebuild the country after the war. Turkish President Recep Erdogan stated this during a joint briefing with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
We once again reaffirmed our commitment to the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of our strategic partner, Ukraine. At the same time, as Turkey, we are always ready to discuss with Russia any proposals that would accelerate a ceasefire and pave the way for a just and lasting peace.
In response, Volodymyr Zelensky emphasizes that Turkey has become a key partner not only in matters of security, but also in the restoration of prisoner exchanges. This is a process that Ukraine hopes to restart by the end of the year.
Right now, many processes have been activated, and we are trying to ensure that all this activity is directed specifically toward peace, toward a dignified peace and guaranteed security.
If you look at Turkish policy, it has always been focused on its own interests, both in relation to Ukraine and in relation to Russia. That is, Turkey does not refuse to trade with the Russian Federation. They do everything that serves their own interests. Of course, right now we are falling within Turkey's sphere of interest, and they support us. To a certain extent, they do support us. Turkey's policy very clearly reflects this 1,000-year-old Eastern approach, very well thought out, very competent, where above all their own interests, and especially economic interests, come first in any situation.
However, a certain tension in the relations between Russia and Turkey is still not really felt. Russian tourists found themselves stranded on board the Astoria Grande cruise liner off the coast of Turkey. In Istanbul, the ship was not granted permission to enter the port. There were over 600 people on board, residents of Krasnodar Krai, Moscow, and Leningrad Oblast, who had purchased a 2-week cruise costing about $3,000. The liner was supposed to call at Marmaris, Antalya, Bodrum, and Izmir. Previously, a similar situation occurred with the Sibrich ferry, which was supposed to resume cargo and passenger service between Trabzon and Sochi after a 14-year hiatus. Upon arriving in Sochi, the vessel was unable to dock and return to Turkey. The Russian authorities explained the refusal by citing the alleged technical unpreparedness of the ports and the inability to ensure the safe reception of vessels. Some are already calling this Turkey's response to the actions of the Russian authorities. Imposing restrictions on transportation is becoming a tool of pressure and an indicator of Turkey shifting towards supporting Ukraine and limiting Russia's capabilities in the Black Sea.
This is also a very important and strategic logistical hub for the Russian Federation. We must not forget that both the crude oil pipelines as well as the natural gas pipelines that are passing through Turkey primarily supply and are responsible for delivering gas and oil that originate from Russia. Therefore, Turkey is a strategically important and central hub not only for Ukraine, but also an important and indeed the only hub for Russia.
Meanwhile, Erdogan held a phone conversation with the Russian dictator. According to the Kremlin, the parties discussed bilateral relations, the war between Russia and Ukraine, as well as regional and global issues. Putin allegedly confirmed the Russian side's interest in resolving the conflict through political and diplomatic means.
An exchange of views was held regarding the situation around Ukraine, including in the context of American proposals for a peaceful settlement. Vladimir Putin noted that these proposals, in the version we have reviewed, are in line with the discussions held at the Russian-American summit in Alaska and, in principle, could serve as the basis for a final peaceful settlement, according to the Kremlin.
President Erdogan, for his part, declared Turkey's readiness to continue efforts aimed at achieving a just and lasting peace, and to participate in any diplomatic initiatives that will promote direct dialogue between the parties.
Turkey is ready, as before, to contribute to all diplomatic initiatives and plans that will facilitate direct contacts between the parties and pave the way for lasting peace in our region.
Although Ankara seeks to maintain its role as a mediator in Russian-Ukrainian relations, its recent actions demonstrate an increasingly clear orientation toward international law and support for Ukrainian sovereignty.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The strike from the payment hit the Russian capital and the effect is staggering. A ruthless sweep of the occupiers continues in Pokrovsk. Ukrainian forces are operating precisely, swiftly and relentlessly. The front is white-hot, and after the failure near Kupiansk, the Russian army is rolling downhill, losing position after position. Pressure on the Russian Federation is increasing every day. The West is tightening the noose, and in Washington, preparations are underway for a moment that could change everything. Will the United States dare to allow its weapons to strike at the very heart of Russian command centers? All the details are in the following report.
Moscow and the region. Drones attacked the Shatura power plant in the Moscow region. Preliminary reports indicate that the power output node of the State District power plant was on fire. It is this power plant that supplies the capital region of the Russian Federation with electricity and heat, according to the Russian publication Astra. The season of raids on Russia's strategic facilities continues. Friendly drones paid a mass visit to the KSTO in the Nizhny Novgorod region. Reportedly, the target is named as the Lukoil Nizhny Novgorod refinery and the Siburgstovo petrochemical plant. Ukrainian defenders are also successfully hunting the enemy in the Pokrovsk direction. During an attack by soft fighters on an enemy position, the adversary was either eliminated or taken prisoner. Additionally, with the help of an APC, 3 wounded servicemen from an adjacent unit were evacuated. According to
Over the past week, more than 400 Russian occupiers have been eliminated specifically in the Pokrovsk area.
the air assault forces reported the clearing of the central part of Pokrovsk. The Russians were removed from the area of the Pokrovsk railway station, the Pedagogical College, and Soborny Square. This made it possible to block the occupying army's attempts to amass forces there.
In addition, military strikes are being carried out to eliminate small assault groups of Russian occupiers who have entrenched themselves in the urban areas of this settlement. The main fighting is taking place in the area of the high-rise buildings which are being held by Ukrainian defense forces.
At the moment, the enemy is unsuccessfully trying to cross into the northern part of Pokrovsk via the railway, but is suffering heavy losses. The occupiers were also blocked on another hot front, the Kupiansk direction.
At the moment, the supply of the occupying army's units in the Kupiansk area is being carried out by means of heavy drones. In addition, it was possible to completely block the further advance of the occupying forces toward the key railway junction station Kupiansk-Uzlovaya. And this is the strategic objective of the Russian occupiers in this direction.
The coming months will be critical for Ukraine. This opinion was expressed by American military officials who visited Kiev last week. Moreover, the media report that Europe is preparing for a possible halt in US aid to Ukraine.
At the time when information about the 28 so-called peace agreement points appeared in Western media, the armed forces of Ukraine struck Russian territory using American equipment. They were referring to ATACMS missiles. Their tactical and technical specifications allow for a range of up to 300 kilometers to hit targets. Their use would have been impossible without the consent of the US military and political leadership. The US Special Representative to the UN stated categorically that if the Russian Federation does not come to the negotiating table, the United States will increase the scale of military and technical assistance to Ukraine, and they will impose additional so-called secondary economic sanctions against the strategic economic partners of the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, Russia's presence in Europe itself has increased significantly. The UK Ministry of Defence announced the interception of a Russian warship and a tanker. According to the British Military Department, over the past 2 years, the number of Russian ships passing near British waters has increased by 30%. At this very moment, Europe is under assault. The West is closely monitoring the sharp maneuver of Russian troops toward the Polish direction. The Kremlin is playing out an alarming scenario. The Baltic is switching to immediate response mode. Its signals sound like a danger siren. Behind the scenes of diplomacy, what Moscow tried to hide is coming to light. European capitals are simultaneously putting their troops on combat readiness. Paris and London are demonstrating their readiness to act decisively and swiftly. Is the West on the brink of confrontation? All the most striking facts and reactions right now.
War between Western countries and Russia is becoming increasingly likely.
As I analyze the facts, I come to the conclusion that war between Europe and Russia is becoming more and more apparent. This is not an empty rumor. Everyone is preparing for it.
The buildup of military equipment, strengthening of borders, and increase in defense budgets, all of this is to confront the Kremlin in a few years.
In 3 or 4 years, we may be facing a kind of test of our strength. It is already manifesting itself in hybrid forms, but it could become much harsher.
For now, all Russia is capable of is testing the patience of NATO countries, for example, with accidental flights of Russian drones into various countries, including Poland. After the railway sabotage, the Polish authorities announced the launch of a new operation, Horizon, to protect critical infrastructure from sabotage.
Most likely, this only concerns the territories bordering Ukraine and Belarus. Most likely? So, nothing more than that. But again, 10,000 people, what does that really mean? That's not a lot, it's a very small number. Our entire border service is 1,040 people.
As part of the operation, Poland plans to use not only manpower, but also military equipment, mobile security systems, and reconnaissance.
Complexes are chemical structures formed when atoms, ions, or molecules bond together, often through coordinate covalent bonds, to create a single unified entity. These complexes are important in many chemical reactions and processes. It's good that it's only happening now. This is a country from the entire alliance. They will spend the most money on purchasing all sorts of military equipment. They really made a big leap in recent years in purchasing all kinds of military equipment, American, European, even South Korean.
Warsaw has also launched a program to train citizens in basic security skills, from first aid to actions in emergency situations.
The Baltic states have long been living in this mode. They've been studying tactical medicine and drones for a long time. Apparently, things are not going well for them. This is a typical story that should be the case in all countries that understand that sooner or later the Russian Federation will come to them.
And Britain and France have already determined which units could be sent to Ukraine. But what is clear after the peace agreement?
Their number will be minimal. The number most likely will be about 10 to 15,000 people from each country. But again, this is a very small number. They won't be able to do anything. A front line shared with Russia is active. 1,250 kilometers. 1,250. For a peacekeeping mission, this number is definitely not enough.
Nevertheless, any military preparations by the West are clearly not to the Kremlin's liking.
The Kremlin, located in Moscow, Russia, is a historic and iconic fortress that serves as the official residence of the president. It is recognized for its political significance and unique architecture. Countries are following this path, even though it is destroying their economies.
But the main question is how ready European countries really are to confront the Kremlin at this moment, and how much more time they need to prepare.
They told me that they need at least 2 more years just to get their army into some kind of order. At least 2 years, ideally 5 years. 5 to 7, that's what they say. 5 to 7 years. Ideally, a minimum of 2, but not less than 2. Because it's not just about shells, not just about tanks. Obviously, it's about money, allocations, placing orders, starting to assemble equipment. It's about people.
From time to time, Ukraine and NATO openly showcase new types of weaponry, reminding the Kremlin of their capabilities.
Turkey has unveiled its first unmanned fighter jet, the Bayraktar Kizilelma, which is now equipped by the national military. The United States is launching the development of a new F-47 fighter jet. According to Trump and Germany,
He is even preparing Bundeswehr soldiers to practice actions in case of the worst-case scenario. Europe is gradually ramping up its preparations and strengthening its defense. This situation is clearly not in the Kremlin's favor, as at any moment Russia could face an unexpected response. We'll end our broadcast here. We will continue to monitor the most important events right now and be the first to tell you about them. Don't forget to subscribe. See you!